In this preparation, which he calls now Shel Mesiras Nafsh L'Hashem, of giving my neshama to the Eibishter. And the Pshat Mesiras Nefesh is that since I'm not Mareres Machshavas B'Tzarchi Aguf, I'm giving myself away to the Eibishter, as if you're dying to the Eibishter, simply because I could use my time for me and I'm using it for the Eibishter. And one of the effects of this act is L'Davka Be'Yizbarach. What's the Mesiras Nefesh? I say to myself, I come from God, I'm going to God, L'Davka Be'Yizbarach. This is called Mesiras Nefesh. This preparation, which is called Mesiras Nefesh, which is not the madrege of l'shem yichud of Shechina, which is for Klolos Yisrael, but Davka Be'Yizbarach. Says the Rebbe, Yaschel B'chas HaShachar. That's all you should begin to say B'chas HaShachar. Baruch Ata V'chulu. When he talks to the Eibishter, he says Baruch. His kavanah should be to be Mesiras Nefesh, his neshama to the Eibishter. V'chein, similarly, B'achon Azu, Yaschel Lumit. That's how a person should prepare himself when he's beginning to learn. That when he has Shir Kavua, B'yad Achar HaTfilah, fixed time to learn, and he should do it right after davening. The Gemara says that Beis HaKnesses Beis HaMedrash, as soon as you daven, which is called Chaye Shah, you go to learn, which is called Chaye Elam, to experience Getlachai. V'chein Be'emtayim, and also in the middle of the day. That Kedem Shaschal Lumad, anytime you want to learn Teda, Tzricha Hachana Zu L'Pachas. You have to have this preparation at the very least. And what is the Hachana? That a Yid should say that in my learning and in my davening, there's an inyan of Mesiras Nefesh. Elecha Adeshem Nafshi Esa L'Davka Be'Yizbarach. Kineda, it is known, when you get to the inyan of Lishma, She'ikir Hachana Lishma L'Yakev, the Ikir preparation Lishma. That which make liikuva. If you didn't do it, it's possible. But if you did do it, it's kosher, even though it may not be the best way. Who betchilas alimud b'benyanim. It's the beginning of one's learning in the benyanim. Okmei beget v'sefer Teda. When a person writes a get, or a person writes sefer Teda, shetzrichim l'shma la'akiv. Has to have l'shma la'akiv. La'akiv means that if you didn't have l'shma, it's poshet possible. But v'daya, it's sufficient. Sheyeme betchilas aksiv. You should say at the very beginning of the writing, I didn't indicate l'shem k'shtush sefer Teda, l'shmei v'l'shma v'chuli. I'm writing for the holiness of sefer Teda, or in the case of a get, l'shmei and l'shma and so forth. And therefore, at least, even if you can't have this kavanah of Mesiras Nefesh, as you're learning in the beginning of the limud, your kavanah should be Baruch Ata, and the translation of Baruch Ata is that I'm learning, and my life is to be Mesiras Nefesh to Hashem, not just B'tzeis HaNefesh Min HaGuf, the B'leis Shiv Mishana, but every second. And this same notion you should know you have in Tanya Perek Lamed Aleph. Mamash the same idea. But over there he calls it Yitzias Mitzrayim. And over here he calls it Mesiras Nefesh. The inyan is the same, but over there you're saving yourself from atzvos. And over here you're being Mesiras Nefesh for the Eibishter. If the person learns many hours contiguously in a row, a person should think about this hachana of liyachta kuchabricha shkente betachtenim. And at the very least, this inyan of Alecha Havai Nafshi has to give manana back to the Eibishter b'chol shah v'shah, call upon him at least once every hour. In other words, if you learn for many hours, stop each hour. If you can't have the kavanah of Mesiras Nefesh every second, each hour stop, and think that in this learning, Elach Hashem Nafshi As, I'm giving my neshama back to the Eibishter. In other words, I'm being L'Davka Be'Yizbarach, I'm being Mamshech Eidin Tzaf on my Nefesh. Why every hour? Ki b'kol shah v'shah, each hour. Hi Amshacha Acheretz, it's a different Amshacha Me'elim Esayenim from the higher worlds. La'ach is a tachtenin, to give life to the lower worlds. Because V'amshachas Achayes Shebeshah Shalafaneha, the life which came down to vitalize, to give energy to the world, the previous hour, Chayzeres Lamkeda returns to its source, Lamayla Namakar Azman. B'seid Ratzi V'shuv, B'seif Yitzira, according to the mystical concept of Ratzi V'shuv, which is discussed in Seif Yitzira. But, Im Kol HaTeira U'Maisim Tevim, but all the Teira and Maisim Tevim, Shatachtenim, which were done by people in this world during the hour that it was Machaya de Elimus. So the time, the energy of the time comes down, and an hour later goes up and a new time comes down, but it doesn't go up the way it came down. It lifts up all the Yiddishkeit. And by the way, that's also a part of the Yichud Kuchabricha Shchente. My kavanah is to be connecting myself with the Meibish. When the Shah returns and lifts up the Teda Mitzvahs to the Shadish, to Atzilus, to Lakus. Ki b'chol Shah each hour.
You doing that's not saying you're constantly.
Adai to nafshi for yourself. L'Davka Be'Yizbarach.
You also constantly saying Yichud.
Of course, but it's a different L'Shem Yichud. It's one L'Shem Yichud v'im Yachid Ma'ineh Shamud Eibishter, which is called Adai to the nafshi, and it's a much higher L'Shem Yichud Kuchabricha Shchinte, which is B'Shem Kol Yisrael. Ki b'chol Shah every hour Sheila Tzirif Echa. There's a dominance of a different one of the formations of Yud Kei Vav Kei Yud Beis Tzirif Hashem Havaya Baruch, for the 12 Tzirif Hashem Havaya Baruch. You could write Yud Kei Vav Kei in 12 different ways. But the Rebbe writes in the footnotes that even though there's two hays, and the hays look the same, but B'Apikabah, the two different hays, so there's actually 24 tzirufim of Shem Havaya. But of those 24, 12 of them give Chayis B'Yud Beis Shoyis Hayim during the 12 hours of the day. And of course, V'Tziruf of Shem Adnai, and 12 tzirufim of Shem Adnai is Balayla. By night can't it know. Now for sure, Adnai has 24 tzirufim. Let's say the Lashon and say for Yitzira. Abba Batim, B'Nes Esrim V'Abba. Abba. You can make 24 words out of Adnai. Nevertheless, somehow there's your base truth of Havaya, base truth of Adnai. The Rebbe has a footnote on this in the Shur B'Sefer Tanya, and at this moment I don't remember it. Now, V'hinei, Kol Kavanos say his whole intent. B'Mesid is Nafshel Havaya, in that when he's learning Teda and doing mitzvahs, he's giving himself away to the Eibishter. Ayadei HaTeda Vatfil, through the Teda that he's learning the davening which he's doing. Lahala is to lift up. The divine spark which is inside of itself. Itself means your neshama, my neshama, our neshamas. Lemkede, to its root. Yes, this is Adaita de Nafshei. Says the Rebbe, one more detail. In other words, like this. The whole Nakuda, the second half of this Pedic, is Ben. What's Ben? To attach Shechina with Kodesh Baruch. He says that you should do anyway, even though you don't mean it be'emes la'amite. What do you mean? That's not the madrega of Ben. That's the nafsh. So he says there's two aspects to lifting up that's being achieved. One of the nafsh, and the other we're calling it lishma. So he adds one more nakuda. Even when you're only holding by madrega of the nafsh, where the yichud that you're creating is connecting you with the Eibishter, as opposed to connecting a lukus with the Eibishter, you should do it for the Eibishter's sake. He says tehei should be rak only b'chtei lasis nachas ruach l'fanu v'yizbach, to give the Eibishter nachas ruach. You hear the gedank? I am learning to and doing mitzvahs, elach havai nafshi, as to become closer to the Eibishter. And your kavanah should be, why am I coming closer to the Eibishter? To do the Eibishter a favor. Kemashol simchas hamelach, the joy of a king. When his only son comes to him, he was coming out of a captivity, in a prison. Kanal, we discussed earlier means Pedek Lamed Aleph. Listen to me carefully, yeah. Pedek Lamed Aleph, the Alter Rebbe said that a Yid has Itzoven Aguf. He has the depression from the fact that he's in a Neshama Baguf, that he's stuck in Elam Hazar. What's the solution to this Itzoven Aguf? That's means Zeis Tiavidas, they call Yamav. What should a person spend his whole life doing? Doing Teira and Mitzvahs, because every time I do Teira and Mitzvahs, it's Yitzias and Nefesh Min HaGuf. How do I take myself out of my depression? I take myself out of my depression by learning Teira and doing Mitzvahs. So you have a marshal of a son of a king who's trapped. He's in jail. He comes home. Yeah, who's happy about it? Everybody's happy about it. The son is no longer a prisoner, and the father has his son back. So in Pedek Lamed Aleph, he said, you should be besimcha from the fact that you're free. In Pedek Mem Aleph, he says, your kavanah should be the simcha of the Eibishter. You see the difference? Over there, he spoke about how you should get joy from the fact that you're free from the Titzias Mitzrayim. Here he says, it's simchas hamelech. Your kavanah should be not for you, the dafka beis barach for you, but give the Eibishter nachas ruach. This is a funny inyan. So let's think about it one more time. Yichud Kodesh Baruch Hu is madrega of merkava lishma. You don't really mean. You're doing it anyway. L'shem kol Yisrael. Yichud nafshei l'chabei yizbarech for you. You mean be'emes la'amite. Now you have a middle inyan that you're being l'dofka be'yizbarech. You're elecha Hashem nafshi esed. You're bringing your neshama back to the Eibishter. But what's your reason? Bring Yeshua back to Eibishter to give the Eibishter nachas ruach, which is like a middle madrege. It's taka l'shem nafshoi, for my neshama, as opposed to Shechina, which is in Atzilus. But why do I want to Hashem should have a nachas ruach? It's like a middle step. It's a daita de nafshe, because I'm connecting my neshama with the Eibishter, as opposed to l'shma, because it's not about connecting malchus with Kodesh Baruch Hu. But my daita de nafshe is that Hashem should have nachas ruach, as opposed to that I should have nachas ruach. Says Avini Kavana Zu, this Kavana that I'm taka doing Yiddishkeit, the Dafka Be'yizbarach, as opposed to the Yachid Shbicho Shchinte, but I'm doing it that Hashem should have nachas ruach. This also he amitis be'emes lamite lagamri is true, in absolute truth. B'chol nefesh misal, the soul of every single Jew, b'chol eisa b'chol shah, in every hour and every moment. Also, may ava tivus with the natural love, she Yerushalayim may have a which is from our parents. So you see, it looks like Alter Rebbe is repeating himself, but he's saying many different nekudas. He says the highest madrege the lower madrege is Allah Hashem nafshi yasal dafka by yizbarach my neshama shall become attached with the Eibishter. This second madrege you mean it be'emes lamite aleph. He calls it mesiras nefesh beis. He said you should have this kavanah before you do every mitzvah. And if you're learning Torah for many hours, you have it one time a day. And Gimel, you should do it to give the Eibishter nachas ruach. And not only is ledafka bei be'emes lamite, but that you're doing the ledafka bei to give Hashem nachas ruach is also be'emes lamite. It's a third inyan. Then, you have to put aside time. Think about the greatness of the Eibishter. Lahasik, to reach intellectually a sense of the chilul chimu sichlim, yir and ava, which is the madrega of bria, sechel. That's still not merkava, it's still not atzilus. Perhaps you'll do this much work. Perhaps you'll reach a possibility where you'll be holding by a madrege, where you're doing it not just adaita de nafshe, but you're doing it lishma, kanal like we mentioned earlier. And earlier, I don't know what kanal is, but it bepashtis, the loshen kula haiva uli yatzaf perikud dalet, that maybe you'll become a tzaddik. And though it's not time becoming a tzaddik, here means tzaddikim agdolim, who are learning Torah mitzvahs, l'shem ha-Torah, l'shem yechakot shabriach shchin l'mayla. And this is madrega ben. The ben, l'yach nafshe l'mayla, l'echet from ben. Especially if you're doing it to give the Eibishter nachas ruach. The real shleimus inyan of ben is when it's yachad kutcha b'richu shchinte. You want to be miyachad the midas of atzilus with all the goes within yourself.